Next bit of technique we're going to look at is the slap. So the slap, a lot of people focus on the slap, and a lot of people who are new to drumming have difficulty with the slap. Personally, I think the tone is actually more important. I'll explain why in a minute, but I'll show you how to get a slap first. So there are lots of different ways to get slaps. Here's just one way to get you in the ballpark. So as opposed to the tone, where I recommended you have this bit here on the edge of the drum, for the slap, when you're first starting, try just moving in so this paddy bit here is on the edge of the drum. So when you're hitting the drum, instead of there for a tone, for a slap, it's about there. Again, when you get really good technique, you want as little movement as possible. For now, this is just to help you get the different sound. So a couple of ways to think about it. Up here is the same as the tone. So you're starting from up here, your fingers are together, relaxed but not floppy and not stiff. So kind of together, and your wrist is back. And what's happening is you're coming down like this, hitting this bit on the edge. So this bit of your hand's hitting the edge. And when that hits the edge, there should be a little bit more of an angle to your fingers, so that when this hits the edge, there's space between your fingers and the drum head. So I'll show you a couple of exercises to help build that up. First thing, just practice doing that. No sound. I know it's hard to do no sound. You want to do sound? No sound. So no sound, starting from up here, and making sure that when you hit the drum, when this bit of your hand makes contact with the edge of the drum, there's space beneath your fingers. So I don't want your fingers curved like that. I want there's space under there. So what might be different from the tone is my wrist is a little bit lower than where it was before. For a tone, my wrist is up here. When you're starting with the slap, try just dropping your wrist a little bit to get that angle. And then once you've got that, try doing a little bit harder, but kind of stopping your fingers from hitting the drum. So like this. So I'm hitting it harder, but I'm kind of holding my fingers back and they're stiff. So this is just an exercise. This is not how you actually do it. And if you make a little sound, that's okay. But so hands coming back here, and just, a little bit of sound sometimes. And then once you're doing that, I want you to relax your fingers when you hit it like this. Not so they end up on the drum like that. I still want them to end up off the drum here when you finish. So like that. And that's a slap. That's it. So pretty much what's happening, this bit of your hand's hitting the edge, and then your fingers are just bouncing on their own. Bouncing down, bouncing back, and just your fingertips are hitting the drum. But I think a key when you're starting is not think about the fingertips. Think about this bit hitting the edge, and let your hand bounce like that. When you're letting it bounce, don't be too lazy. Don't let it sort of stay floppy. Let it come back like this. And then once you've got that sound happening, then make sure you bring your hand back to where you started, like this. And that's a slap. So in singing the rhythms, remember a bass is gung, or something like that. Tone is ding, something like that. Slaps, pa, ta. It depends. We'll see. Try and keep track of what I use. See if I'm consistent. So slaps, pa, ta. So tone, slap. Tone, slap. You hear the difference there? So the point I wanted to make earlier about why I think tones are in a way more important than slaps is that slaps can sound a lot of different ways. All you have to get is that high pitch ringing sound, like that. And you can sometimes get that if your tones aren't clean. What will happen is you'll sometimes get a little bit of that high pitch sound creeping into your tones. If your tones are sort of like this, like if your fingers are a bit too apart or floppy or something, you can get that sort of sound. Rather than this, you get this. So if you're finding your tones sound like that, the problem is it doesn't leave enough difference between your tone and your slap. So the reason the slap sounds good is because your tone sounds really round and clean. If your tone sounds round and your slap sounds sharp, the difference is good. If your slap sounds sharp and your tone kind of isn't clean, you don't get anywhere near the definition. So I would recommend, first thing, when you're working on slaps, don't just hit it harder, you'll hurt your hand. So when you're working on slaps, start with the basic thing like I showed you, doing it with no sound to make sure your hand's doing the right thing without risking hurting yourself. And then gradually do it a little bit harder And what will happen over time is you'll start to get a feel for what your hands feel like when you do a slap. And then you'll start kind of having more control over it. It's a kinesthetic thing. Your hands will learn it. So once you've got that, then work on your tones and make sure your tones are really clean. And careful when you're working on your tones, make sure you don't end up just locking your wrists. The tendency is to kind of get a good angle for your tones, and then you lock your wrist because you don't want to risk compromising that angle. But what that does is it means you can't play as fast or as powerfully because you're not getting any of that movement of your wrist. So what you want to do is if you end up doing it, that's fine, but be careful that you don't end up playing like this for the sake of getting clean tones. You want to always make sure your sound's coming back here and you're getting your wrist involved. You'll thank me for it later. So tones and slaps. Your hand should be back here. Another thing to be aware of when you're doing slaps, don't curve your hands up here. The tendency sometimes is to get in the position for the slap all the way back here. You want your hands to be the same back here for a tone as for a slap. So pretty much from here up until about here, tone and slap should look pretty much the same. And then it changes in this last little bit. And that will give you more efficiency. It means you can play faster. Everyone wants to play faster. So that's slaps.